Hey guys, so today I'll be talking about the greatness of Georges St-Pierre. I'll be dissecting his wins and telling you which ones are elite wins and all-time wins. Because someone like GSP, I am so disappointed how these resume kids want to downgrade him and disrespect his legacy. This is the guy that literally had everything. He had the accomplishments, being two-division champion, title defenses, avenged all his wins. The resume, numerous elite wins and all-time wins, which I'll go over. He had everything, and he was so skilled and well-rounded. He is literally number two of all time, only behind John Jones right now. You could put Silva over him only if you value innovation, skill, and finishes, but resume-wise and accomplishments, he is clearly number two all time. This is going to be the funeral of the resume kids. So, resume kids, if you don't want to have your funeral, skip this because I'm going to dissect the arguments and bury them to show you why he has elite wins and all-time wins and why they're so great and valued. Now, before I explain to you guys what his wins are, I will first go over my definitions of all-time and elite wins because I see many people just throw these terms out without saying what they mean. Here it is. All time, I define it as beating a guy who was an all-time great in their primes or close to it without asterisks. Elite, I define it as a top five guy of your time beating them without asterisks. By asterisks, I mean short notice, severe and documented injuries, fighting in a weight class where they didn't accomplish greatness, such as Adesanya fighting at light heavyweight, and being gifted a top ranking, like Paddy Pimblett being gifted a top five without actually being a top five lightweight. That's an example. Now, here are my definitions. Let's go over what I mean by elite wins and all-time wins for Georges St-Pierre. Give me a second, guys. Yep, there you go. You see? Look here at Georges St-Pierre, what he's done. I'm going to go over all his wins and tell you which ones are elite and all-time. I'll skip the ones which don't say elite and all-time. Okay? So let's look at Caro and Jay. Not top five and not elite. Jason Miller, not elite. Frank Trigg, interesting one. Frank Trigg going to the GSP fight was what? So this is Frank Trigg's record. Coming off the loss against Matt Hughes, then lost to GSP. But the question is, who did he beat that was actually elite? Verissimo, Verissimo, not really. Hallman beat Matt Hughes twice, I know that. Going to the Trigg fight, what was he? Didn't do much in the UFC, so I'd say Hallman could be elite MMA win, but not much in the UFC. And so overall, I wouldn't really say that Frank Trigg is an elite win of GSP, which we can agree upon because, yes, maybe he's been a top five at the time, but did he actually earn it? Because beating guys like Verissimo and Hallman, who didn't really do much in UFC at the time, that's hardly an elite win based on UFC standards, but it's a maybe. Now, Sean Sherk, the muscle shark, the guy who only lost to all-time greats, let's see where he was. Sean Sherk. So he was on a long, long win streak for GSP. So by MMA goatless standards, he's elite. Lost to Matt Hughes. Beat some guys. He would go on to beat Diaz, Florian, and Franca, and Griffin. So this one, in my opinion, could be an elite win. I can see why, because he had a long win streak. And right after that, if you guys believe in wins aging, beat Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz at the time, going into the Sean Sherk fight was what? Was on a two-fight skid, so wasn't really that great. Beat Kenny Florian. Kenny Florian, who decent win. But overall, I'll say Sean Sherk could be an elite win, but he's more so a good win because the guys he beat in the UFC didn't really do much outside promotion. But MMA Sanders, he's an elite win. BJ Penn, ooh, BJ Penn. Don't only look at this overall, saying he's 16-14, because that's silly. Look at who was at the time. BJ Penn, when he fought GSP. Rodrigo Gracie, Dwayne Ludwig. He beat Matt Hughes and became the champion. Matt Serra's not an elite win, but a guy who beat Matt Hughes, and Matt Hughes, when he lost to BJ Penn the first time, was what? Was a champion with 5 defenses. So BJ Penn going to GSP, beat Matt Hughes, a champion with 5 defenses. That is elite. So BJ Penn, elite one. So BJ Penn. So that's one elite win. Matt Hughes, when he knocked him out. Matt Hughes was on a 6-fight win streak, a champion with 2 defenses, beat BJ Penn, who's his elite win. GSP knocks him out. That is an all-time win. So we have one elite win in BJ Penn and one all-time Matt Hughes. And then Josh Koscheck. Let's see Josh Koscheck. Who was he? We're going like I can't remember who they were going to GSP. The first time he fought GSP, he was 9-1, beat Diego Sanchez, and he beat Diego Sanchez when he was on a 17-fight win streak, beating Joe Riggs, Parisian. And Joe Riggs, who's Joe Riggs? Don't say some bum, because you guys don't know who he is. You guys are going to say bum. No. Joe Riggs going into the... Where am I? Diego Sanchez beat Von Flue, Nick Diaz, only lost to Matt Hughes. Pretty decent fighter at the time. And Kara Parisian, a good Armenian fighter, beat Sarah, Little, Diaz. Pretty solid fighter overall. And a fight of the year against Diego Sanchez. So while I won't count it, I can see why it's an elite win. Matt Hughes, I mean, obviously, bro, obviously. So I'm going to say one elite win for BJ Penn, one all-time Matt Hughes, one elite Matt Hughes 3. And now let's look at Matt Serra. He mentioned his loss. I won't say it's an elite win because he's a one-fight wonder, so no Matt Serra there. Still have one elite win of BJ Penn, one all-time Matt Hughes, one elite Matt Hughes 3. John Fitch. John Fitch. Going to the GSP fight, what was he? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 fight win streak. Impressive stuff. And who did he beat? He beat Thiago Alves. Thiago Alves, who was okay, but would later go on to defeat Matt Hughes and Josh Koscheck. Floravanti, Carnero, Wilson didn't do much in the UFC. Ron Carnero, Diego Sanchez, where was he when fought John Fitch? Where was he? He was 17-1. So Diego Sanchez is an elite win of John Fitch. 17-0 in the UFC at the time, lost to Josh Koscheck in a decision, by decision, and then close fight against John Fitch, and then Diego Sanchez goes on to win multiple times and fights for the lightweight. So you could argue that John Fitch is an elite win because he had the win streak, beat Diego Sanchez, who's 17-1. That is an elite win. So I'm gonna have one elite win for John Fitch. But if you guys don't want to say elite, it's okay, but keep on going. And BJ Penn. People saying that, oh, BJ Penn out of his prime when he fought GSP. I'm like, are you guys mentally kidding me? Like, what is this? Let's look at BJ Penn. I already said the first time when he fought George St-Pierre, he was 10-2, and he ended Matt Hughes' 5 defenses going to the GSP fight. That was elite. And then goes to lightweight, beats Pulver, Stevenson, and Shirk, the same guy who only lost all-time greats, then fights BJ Penn. So BJ Penn, too, in my opinion, is an all-time win because he was an all-time great going to the fight because he became a lightweight champion and was welterweight champion that beat Matt Hughes. So going to the GSP fight, he was a 2-division champion, a lightweight champion, and also conquered welterweight too. And after GSP, he beats Florian Sanchez, defends his lightweight belt. So this guy is an all-time win. So BJ Penn, 2 all-time. So what do we have? We have 3 elite wins in BJ Penn, Matt Hughes, John Fitch, which if you guys don't want to have John Fitch, that's okay. But BJ Penn and Matt Hughes definitely elite. All-time in Matt Hughes, he's an all-time great, and all-time in BJ Penn. So that's 2 all-time wins for you, baby. 2 all-time wins. Now, after BJ Penn, what do we have? We have Thiago Alves. I'm say, oh, Thiago Alves, the bum. Listen, guys, Thiago Alves, who was he at the time? Most important is, who was he at the time? Look, fighting GSP, what? First of all, he was on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fight win streak in the UFC, 7 fight win streak. And who did he beat? That's elite. Matt Hughes. Matt Hughes, don't say, oh, out of prime, washed. No, he was not washed at the time. Keep coping, guys. Matt Hughes at the time just lost to GSP for the interim belt. And then Thiago Alves knocks out Matt Hughes right after that. And Matt Hughes wasn't washed at the time because he beat Sarah Gracie Almeida in the UFC. So don't tell me Matt Hughes is not an elite fighter. So Thiago Alves knocked out Matt Hughes and also Josh Koscheck. Josh Koscheck, who was he at the time? Not this stuff, but talking about Josh Koscheck when he fought Thiago Alves was a title challenger, a guy fought GSP. He was 11-2. So he was a pretty decent fighter. So I say based on the Matt Hughes win and a good win against Josh Koscheck, 1 for Thiago Alves. 1 elite Thiago Alves. So what do we have? 4 elite wins, 2 all-time wins. Dan Hardy, I mean, I say elite win is beating top 5 of your time, but who did he beat at the top 5 of his time? Gono, Markham, Davis, Swick, not an elite win. But keep on going. We're not done yet. And then he beats Koscheck again. Josh Koscheck again he beats. Josh Koscheck, who was he? Paul Daly he beat. Rumble Johnson. Trigg is kind of out of it. And then after he loses to George St-Pierre, goes on to beat Matt Hughes in a KO. So this guy was pretty decent. And who's Paul Daly, you might ask? Paul Daly, the guy who sucker punched Josh Koscheck. Not the Bellator stuff, but Paul Daly. He was okay. Rumble Johnson, who was he? At welterweight, who was Rumble Johnson going into the Josh Koscheck fight? He was on a 3-fight win streak. He wasn't that bad. And he fights George St-Pierre. So this could be argued as an elite win, but I'll let it slide. And if you guys don't want it, okay. But for me personally, he's an elite win because he was an elite fighter, pretty decent, and George St-Pierre beat him. So it's one elite, Koscheck 2. And now next he fought Jake Shields. Jake Shields. You guys say he's not an elite win? First of all, look at who Jake Shields was when he fought George St-Pierre. Not the PFL, WSOF stuff, but who was he? He was on a 15-fight win streak. Remember, that's also on UFC. Listen, at the time of the George St-Pierre era, the UFC was not a monopoly. There were other promotions such as Strikeforce, WEC, multiple stuff which are better than UFC or comparable to UFC. Only when UFC bought Strikeforce, WEC, combined with buying Pride, they became number one. But with Strikeforce still in the mix, you could argue there are other promotions that were comparable to UFC. But anyways, let's look at this. He beat Martin Kampmann, Henderson. Don't say Henderson was washed. Who was Henderson at the time? Henderson was what? Dan Henderson was going into the Jake Shields fight. Knocked out Bisping beautifully. Rich Franklin, former champion, Paul Harris. So he still had it. He was still a very solid fighter. After looking at Jake Shields beats Fedor, Shogun in a beautiful fight of war. So this guy was pretty solid version of Dan Henderson. Martin Kampmann, he was okay. So Robbie Lawler, who he beat. I know afterwards he became a champion with 2 defenses, but who was he in Strikeforce when he fought Jake Shields? He was in Elite XC, Frank Trigg. So now Jake Shields, by MMA standards, was an elite win because he beat Henderson, Woodley, Lawler, but only had 1 fight in the UFC. So yes, by MMA standards, because of his wins and 15-fight win streak, he's an elite win. But by UFC standards, I'd say no. Now, Carlos Condit, the natural-born killer. Going to GSP, what was he? He fought Jake Ellenberger. Jake Ellenberger was what? Going to the Condit fight. Kind of a debutant, but Jake Ellenberger would go on to beat Pyle, Howard. So he'd go on a 6-fight win streak and beats Diego Sanchez and Jake Shields. So that's not a bad win. Rory McDonald, the second best Canadian fighter of all time. Rory McDonald, I know he had a war against Robbie Lawler, but going into the fight with Carlos Condit, the second fight, but he'd go on to win multiple fights. So that's pretty decent. Dan Hardy, not really elite win. Dong Hyun Kim, the second best Korean fighter of all time, Han Korean Zombie. The guy who, going to Carlos Condit, beat Nate Diaz, Sodola, Matt Brown. That's a pretty solid elite win of Carlos Condit because he was a top 5 guy at the time, or a very solid win of Carlos Condit. Nick Diaz going into the fight against Carlos Condit. Who was he? Beat BJ Penn, and this is pretty decent versus BJ Penn. Don't say BJ Penn was washed that time because look at BJ Penn at the time. He was coming off a draw against John Fitch. So BJ Penn was still very decent going to the Nick Diaz fight. So Nick Diaz beat BJ Penn. He was on a whooping win streak when he fought Carlos Condit. So Nick Diaz is an elite win. So by that standard, being a 5-fight win streak, Carlos Condit is your elite win. And he was very skilled, BJJ skills, dynamic striking, beat Nick Diaz, who just beat BJ Penn, who was a very solid version of BJ Penn. Dong Hyun Kim, very solid win. So Carlos Condit is an elite win. So one elite win of Carlos Condit, okay? So to recap, I have 2 all-time wins, Matt Hughes 2 and BJ Penn 2 for George St-Pierre, 2 all-time wins. 1 elite win of BJ Penn, 1 elite win of Matt Hughes 3, 1 elite in Thiago Alves, 1 elite in Koscheck, 1 elite in Fitch, 1 elite in Condit. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elite wins of George St-Pierre. If you don't want to count Koscheck and you don't want to count John Fitch, okay, yes, 4 elite wins and 2 all-time wins. That's very impressive stuff. Now we go with Nick Diaz. Nick Diaz Army. Who was Nick Diaz when he fought George St-Pierre? I mean, he's coming off a loss, so... And then he lost to Carlos Condit, BJ Penn, but he'll beat BJ Penn and Paul Daly. So that one, I would say it's a good one, but an elite one because he lost to Silva and then Robbie Lawler. So Nick Diaz, he's one who I wouldn't mind you guys saying elite win, but personally for me, it's a good win. Now, Johnny Hendricks, the robbery. Come on, guys. I don't think it was robbery, first of all, because if you look at the stats, GSP clearly won rounds 3 and 5. Hendricks clearly won rounds 2 and 4. And round 1 was a swing round. Look at the fight stats. Okay, first I'm going to stop sharing screen for a second and show you the fight stats. Okay, hold on. Wait a second, guys. Patience. 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 Sorry, guys. St-Pierre versus Hendricks. Fight stats. St-Pierre versus Hendricks. Stats. Man, what's on my internet? Yes, found it finally. Okay, guys, I'm going to be sharing my screen again to show you why this is not a robbery. Okay, look. Okay, so GSP, first of all, by 6 strikes against Hendricks, 101, 85 for Hendricks. Total strikes, 125 to 142. So important strikes favored GSP, total favored Johnny Hendricks. 3 out of 6 takedowns. Hendricks had more control time by around double time, but still. Damage score criteria, significant strikes, which is GSP's favor, and takedowns, and effective grappling, which is submission attack, 1 submission attempt. Now let's look at it per round. Round 1, the swing round. 6 strikes, 19 GSP, 18 Hendricks. Total strikes, almost even. GSP won because he had a submission attack in the beginning, that guillotine. So he had effective grappling, which is defined by either ground and pound or submission attacks. So he has submission attacks, Hendricks had none. So GSP won round 1. And plus in that round, what did Hendricks do? Landed a few shots, some few knees, and when GSP pushed him against the cage, he landed some elbows, whereas GSP landed a left hook, had submission attacks, some knees, a takedown, even strikes. So based on submission attack, GSP wins round one. Round two, 30-28, 37-30. So Hendricks is favored in total strikes and 6 strikes, and plus he almost knocked him out, so I'm going to give it to Hendricks. Round three, 31 versus 15. 32-22, so that's clearly GSP's round, no dispute there. Round four, clearly Hendricks. Much more total strikes, more significant strikes, more control time. Clearly Hendricks. Round five, if you look at round five, GSP 6-striked round five, 9-4. 1 minute 54 control time. 2 out of 4 takedowns. Total strikes were even. So GSP won rounds 1, 3, and 5. So no, guys, this is not a robbery. GSP won 1, 3, and 5. 1 was very, very close. Clearly 3 and 5. Hendricks 1, 2, and 4. So anytime you guys see a close fight, you guys say robbery. It was not a robbery. It was a close fight. So GSP beat Johnny Hendricks. Okay? Now I'm going to go back to who Johnny Hendricks was when he fought GSP. Okay, looking at Johnny Hendricks. Johnny Hendricks going to GSP was what? He beat Carlos Condit right after he lost the belts. So it's in a title eliminator. And Carlos Condit at the time, mind you, don't say he's a bum, because you guys don't know what that word means. He just came off loss against Johnny Hendricks. So I mean GSP. Then he fought Johnny Hendricks and he lost. Beat Compman. Beat Thiago Alves. Competitive fight against Robbie Lawler. So pretty solid Carlos Condit. And Johnny Hendricks beat him. So he was on a what? He beat Koscheck, beat Fitch, Condit, then beats Robbie Lawler to become a champion afterwards. So literally Johnny Hendricks is an elite win. So that's one elite win for Hendricks. And now we go back to GSP. GSP. 1 second, share screen. Just want to make sure everything's correct. All right, back to GSP. He beats Michael Bisping after a 4-year hiatus to become 2-division champion. Michael Bisping, what was he going into the GSP fight? Don't look at him overall, because Michael Bisping was on the best run of his career. Dalloway and Lightus. Dalloway, not a real elite win. Lightus, solid win, but I don't know if it's elite, because yes, he was on a win streak, but look at Thales Lightus. Who did he beat that was elite? Boach, Carmon, Smith, Herman. I would say they're elite, so it was a good win for Bisping. Anderson Silva, that's like a low-level elite to good win, because think about it. Silva at the time, when he fought Michael Bisping in a war, who did he face? He lost to Chris Weidman. Arguably beat Nick Diaz, who tested positive for weed, and Silva tested positive for drostanolone and androsterone. Lose to Bisping, fights DC on 1 day notice, and beats Derek Brunson. So this one, you can argue that Silva's an elite win or a good win. And then Luke Rockhold. Don't say Luke Rockhold sucked, because who was Luke Rockhold at the time? Luke Rockhold beat Bisping the first time. Philippou and Bouch, I wouldn't say they're elite, but Lyoto Machida, don't say, oh, he was washed. Because Lyoto Machida, who was Lyoto Machida at the time? Lyoto Machida, the Dragon, when he fought Luke Rockhold, beat Gigan Mousasi, Munoz, fought a war against Chris Weidman, and then beautiful knockout against CB Dalloway. So still an elite fighter. And Luke Rockhold destroys him. And Chris Weidman, so Luke Rockhold, when he lost to Bisping, was coming off the Chris Weidman knockout. He destroyed Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman, don't say he's this bum, because Chris Weidman, going into the Luke Rockhold fight, he ended Prime Silva, beat Lyoto Machida, was very elite. Elite Belfort, don't say Belfort was washed, because Vitor Belfort, going into the Chris Weidman fight, beat Bisping, Rockhold, 2 future champions, and Hendo. Is this really a washed guy out of his prime? And Hendo going into the Vitor Belfort fight, yeah, two-fight losing streak, close fights against Machida and Evans, so still very solid, and then goes on to beat Shogun, former champion. So still an elite version of Henderson, because yes, he's coming off losses, but two close fights against Machida and Evans, former champions. Henderson was not washed that time. And Luke Rockhold, when he knocks out Luke Rockhold, Vitor Belfort, he was the Strikeforce middleweight champion. Michael Bisping, probably before his career surgery, but I'm going to say Michael Bisping. Michael Bisping, he was okay at the time, but still, I still argue that Vitor was elite because he was still pretty solid, potentially on TRTs, and he looked pretty good against Weidman until he got finished. So Chris Weidman, when Luke Rockhold beat him, was at the best of his career, a champ with three defenses, and ended the Silva era. And right after Luke Rockhold ends Chris Weidman, Bisping KOs him. So that is an elite win of GSP. So I'm going to say elite Bisping. So overall, I'm going to count them for you guys. We have one elite in BJ Penn, one all-time Matt Hughes, one elite Matt Hughes, third time, one elite in John Fitch, which you guys can maybe say, no, so I'll put a squiggly mark there. BJ Penn 2 was all-time, becoming a lightweight champion, defends lightweight champion afterwards, and at the time he fought GSP was a welterweight and lightweight champion. So give me all-time BJ Penn. One elite in Thiago Alves, who just ended Matt Hughes. One elite in Josh Koscheck 2, which is maybe. One elite in Condit, one elite Hendricks, one elite Bisping. So he has 2 all-time wins. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 elite wins. If you want to neglect Josh Koscheck and John Fitch, which Exeter elite UFC wins, then he has 6 elite wins. And plus, Jake Shields in MMA GOAT list is an elite win, being on a 15-fight win streak, beating Lawler, Woodley. So in MMA GOAT list, he has an additional elite win. But based on UFC GOAT list, he has 2 all-time wins, 8 elite wins, and maybe 6 elite wins for negotiate. But still, with an amazing resume, multiple-time champion, 2-division status, he is your number 2. Who has this much? And remember, guys, I told you guys this. Elite win is defined as beating a top 5 of your time. And all-time is beating an all-time great in their primes. GSP has 2 all-time wins, 8 elite wins in the UFC. So people think I'm crazy. What are you talking about? Come on. That is a very, very solid resume. And I get so uptight if people disrespect him like that. I mean, to each their own opinions, but come on. GSP, he has everything you have. And you guys might say, oh, but elite wins top 5 of the time. The top 5 are not in today's standards. I say this all the time, and I'll repeat again. How do you know that the top 5 of GSP times, like John Fitch, Carlos Condit, Hendricks, Bisping, Hughes, Penn, do not stack up to today's standards? You can never know this for certain because you can never have a prime BJ Penn versus a prime Kamaru Usman. Impossible. You'll never know how the fight goes until they fight. I'm going to say, oh, one's more skilled than the other. But again, this is called the Ultimate Fighting Championship, not Skill Championship. And fighting is not necessarily determined by skill. It's based on imposing your will and who can knock a guy out, who can wrestle a guy. So you can never know if the top 5 of the time does not stack up to today's standards until you actually watch a prime top 5 of the old gen versus a prime top 5 of the new gen. You will never know how the fight ends up. Because if every single week in fight nights you guys get picks wrong, and you don't know what happened to you guys tomorrow, remember guys, because tomorrow is uncertain, how can you predict a fight outside of your control? So I think my definition of elite, while it's flawed, because if you can prove beyond any reasonable doubt that in a sport like fighting, that the top five of the day does not stack up to the day. If you guys can prove that beyond any reasonable doubt, then my meaning of elite saying top five of your time is not today's standards. But you guys can't.